The market was always loud, filled with voices, smells, and movement. But in one corner of the market there was silence. A small alien girl sat alone, her head down, her arms wrapped around her knees. She was an orphan, and everyone in the marketplace knew it. No parents, no family, no home. People walked past her as if she was invisible. Some whispered about her, saying she was strange, saying she never spoke. The girl had severe social anxiety. She could not face people. Every time she tried, her body froze, her hands shook, and her throat locked tight. Talking was impossible. It was easier to stay silent, easier to hide in the shadows. She kept her eyes down so no one could see her fear. But the market was cruel. Children from the stalls often mocked her. They would throw small stones, laugh, and run away. Some adults looked the other way. Some even told their children not to go near her. They said she was cursed. They said no one could help her. That day the bullies came again. 3 alien children, taller and stronger than her, cornered her near the wall. She tried to move, but her legs felt heavy. Her breathing turned quick. Her chest hurt as the boys laughed. "Why do you never speak?" one boy shouted. "Are you broken?" "Maybe she is mute," another mocked. "Maybe she cannot even cry." They pushed her shoulder, making her stumble. She wanted to scream, but no sound came. Her mouth opened, but only air escaped. Her eyes filled with tears she did not want to show. The crowd nearby did not stop it. Some even smirked, thinking it was only children playing. But there was one pair of eyes that did not look away. A human man, standing near a food stall, watched. Closely, he was tall, his clothes worn from travel, his face calm but sharp. He had seen enough of cruel worlds to know this was not play. He had traveled across systems, and he could always spot when someone was truly suffering. The orphan girl's silence spoke louder than screams. The way her hands shook, the way her body pressed against the wall. It was fear. The boys laughed louder. One reached to grab the scarf around her shoulders, pulling it roughly. That was when the human moved. His steps were quiet but strong. He came closer, his shadow falling over the bullies. The boys froze, looking up at him. His expression was not angry, but his eyes were sharp. "Leave her," he said. His voice was steady, deep. The boys hesitated, glancing at each other. "She is nothing," one muttered, trying to sound brave. But the human took one step forward, towering over them. His silence was heavier than his words. The bullies backed away, muttering insults under their breath before running off into the crowd. The marketplace returned to its usual noise, but in the corner, the silence remained. The alien girl stayed. Pressed against the wall, trembling, she did not lift her head. Not even when the danger was gone. The human crouched down slowly, keeping some distance so he wouldn't scare her more. His eyes softened. He didn't reach for her. He didn't touch her. He simply placed something on the ground between them. A small packet of food he had bought earlier. Warm bread wrapped in paper. "You're hungry," he said quietly. "Take it." The girl's wide eyes flicked up for a second, then back to the ground. Her hands clutched her knees tighter. She didn't move. She didn't trust him. Why would she? No one ever gave her anything without asking something in return. The human didn't push her. He only left the bread near her feet and stood. "No price," he added. "Just eat." Then he turned and began walking away, blending back into the marketplace crowd. His tall figure slowly vanished between the stalls. The girl stared at the bread, her stomach twisted with hunger. She had not eaten since the night before. Her hands shook as she reached out slowly. She picked up the bread, sniffed it, and then took a small bite. It was soft, warm. The taste filled her mouth, and for the first time in a long while, her tears fell not from fear, but from relief. She didn't know who the human was. She didn't know why he had helped her. But in that moment, as she held the bread close, she felt something she had forgotten long ago. Hope. And far away in the crowd, the human turned his head just once, watching her from a distance. He saw her take that bite, and a small, knowing smile crossed his face. He had planted the first seed. He knew she would need more than food, and tomorrow, he planned to bring her something that could truly change her life. The silent girl had no idea what was coming. The next morning, the market was alive again. Voices shouted, sellers argued, and the smell of cooked food filled the air. But in one quiet corner, the orphan alien girl sat with her back against the same wall. She held her knees close, her eyes moving nervously whenever someone passed. She looked smaller than before, as if she was trying to disappear completely. The bread from yesterday was gone. She had eaten every crumb. It had been the first full meal she had tasted in weeks. Her stomach still remembered the warmth, but her mind was troubled. She kept thinking about the human. Why had he given her food? Why had he helped when everyone else ignored her? Her thoughts spun in circles. In her world, kindness always came with a price. If someone gave something, they wanted something back. That was the rule she had learned since she lost her parents, so why was this human different? She didn't trust it. She couldn't. She lowered her head again, afraid the bullies might return. Her body tensed at every laugh in the distance. Every loud step made her hands shake. She wanted to vanish into the ground. She hated being seen, hated being noticed. But then, the sound of steady footsteps made her lift her head. It was him. The human. He carried a small bag and walked with calm purpose. People moved out of his way. Not because he was dangerous, but because there was something strong in his presence. He wasn't like the others. He didn't rush, didn't shout. He simply walked, straight to her. The girl's breath caught. She pressed tighter against the wall, her eyes wide, the memory of the bread burned in her mind. Did he come to demand something now? Did he want her to follow him? Fear tightened her chest. The human stopped a few steps away. He crouched down again, careful not to come too close. He placed the bag on the ground and slowly opened it. Inside were simple foods, bread, fruit, and a small flask of water. He pushed it gently toward her. "Eat," he said softly. His voice was not loud, not commanding. It was calm, steady. The girl shook her head at first. Her throat felt dry. She wanted to speak, to ask why, but no words came. Her lips moved, but her voice refused to leave. The human noticed. He did not press her. He only smiled faintly. "You don't have to say anything," he told her. "I'm not here to make you talk." Her eyes filled with confusion. She did not understand. Everyone always wanted her to speak, to answer, to explain. And when she couldn't, they called her broken, useless, cursed. But this man, he wasn't asking, he was simply giving. Her trembling hand reached out slowly. Her fingers touched the bread, pulled it close. She ate in small bites, her eyes flicking up at him nervously. He stayed still, watching her, not with pity, but with quiet patience. For a long moment, neither spoke. The noise of the marketplace seemed far away. All that mattered was the girl finally eating without fear. The human leaned back slightly, resting his arms on his knees. "You remind me of someone," he said quietly. His gaze drifted away, as if he was remembering a shadow of the past. "A child I once knew who also hid from the world." The girl's ears twitched at his words. She tilted her head slightly. Her mind burned with questions, but she could not form them. Still, she listened. Her silence was her answer. The human finally looked at her again, his eyes kind but serious. "Tomorrow," he said, "I will bring you something else, something better." Her body stiffened. Her fear returned. Something better? What did he mean? Was it a trick? Her heart raced. She wanted to ask, but her voice betrayed her again. No sound came. He stood up slowly, slinging the empty bag over his shoulder. He did not wait for her to respond. He simply said, "Be here," and walked away, blending once, again into the crowd. The girl sat frozen. The food in her lap now felt heavy. Her mind spun with suspicion. Why would a stranger care for her? Why would a human bother with a silent orphan no one wanted? She ate the fruit carefully, her stomach filling but her heart restless. She did not trust the future, but for the first time in a long time, She wanted to see tomorrow. She wanted to know what something better could mean. As the sun lowered in the alien sky, the girl held the small flask of water close. She had never owned anything, never been given something without cruelty attached. Yet now she had food, water, and a strange promise she didn't understand. Her mind whispered warnings, but her heart whispered hope. And in her chest, for the first time, that hope was stronger than her fear. The girl curled up against the wall, closing her eyes, her body trembling less than before. In her silence, she waited for tomorrow, not knowing that her life was about to change forever. The next day arrived with the same noise of the market. Sellers shouted about fresh fruit, merchants argued over prices, and children laughed as they ran between stalls. But the orphan alien girl sat in her usual corner, her eyes fixed on the ground. She waited. Her stomach twisted, not from hunger but from nervousness. All night she had thought about the human's words. Tomorrow, I will bring you something better. What could it mean? A bigger loaf of bread? Clothes? Or something? She could not even imagine. Her fear whispered that it was a trap, yet her heart told her he was different. The sound of heavy footsteps made her glance up. He was back. The human walked through the crowd, carrying a small bundle wrapped in his arms. People turned their heads curious, some even frowned. For in a place where survival meant being cold and hard, the sight of a man carrying something so gently looked strange. He stopped a few steps away from her and crouched down. His eyes softened as he unwrapped the bundle. Inside was something alive, something small, with soft brown fur and bright curious eyes. A tiny earth puppy wagged its tail and gave a playful bark. The girl froze. Her heart pounded. She had never seen such a creature. It wasn't like the animals in the marketplace, which were large, heavy, and used for work or meat. This one was different. It looked fragile, gentle, its eyes full of trust. The human placed the puppy carefully on the ground between them. The little creature sniffed the dirt, then looked up at the girl, wagging its tail so hard its whole body wiggled. Then it walked closer, unafraid. The girl's breath caught. She pressed back against the wall. Her hands shook. She thought it might bite, or scratch, or hurt her like the bullies did. But the puppy only wagged harder, then pressed its wet nose against her knee. Her body went stiff. Her heart raced. She wanted to push it away, but the puppy licked her hand. The warmth of its tongue shocked her. For a second, she forgot her fear. A strange sound escaped her lips, a tiny laugh she hadn't heard from herself in years. The human saw it. His lips curved into a small smile. He didn't speak right away. He let the moment happen. The girl slowly lifted her trembling hand and touched the puppy's fur. It was soft, softer than anything she had ever felt. The puppy wagged again and pushed closer, climbing clumsily into her lap. She froze again, but this time not from fear. Her eyes widened as she looked down at the little creature curled against her. Tears filled her eyes. They rolled down her cheeks before she could stop them. Her chest ached, but it wasn't the old pain of fear. It was something new, something warm. The human finally spoke, his voice gentle. "This is a puppy," he said. "On Earth, they are friends. They stay with you. They never leave you. They do not care if you are rich or poor. They only care that you are kind." The girl stared at him, her lips parting slightly. She wanted to speak, to ask why he had given her such a gift. But as always, her voice was trapped. Still, her eyes spoke the question. The human understood. He leaned forward just a little. "Because no one should be alone," he said. "Not even you." The girl looked back at the puppy, who had now fallen asleep in her lap, tiny breaths rising and falling. A fragile smile spread across her face, the kind of smile that had been lost for years. It was small, but it was real. The marketplace around them continued as usual. But for her, the world had changed. For the first time, someone had given her more than food. Someone had given her something to love, something that loved her back. As the sun rose higher, the girl sat in silence, her arms gently around the puppy. People passing by slowed. Some stopped, shocked to see the silent orphan girl holding an earth animal. Some whispered, some frowned. But the girl didn't care. She didn't even notice. Her heart was too full, too alive. The human stood slowly, watching her. He didn't tell her what to do. He didn't demand thanks. He only said quietly, "Take care of him. He will give you strength." The girl looked up at him, her eyes wet but shining. For the first time, she nodded, a small, shaky nod, but it was enough. The human gave her one last look, his face unreadable, but kind. Then he turned and walked into the crowd, leaving her with the puppy still warm in her lap. She lowered her face into the soft fur, her hands trembling less now. She whispered a soundless word not even fully formed, but in her heart, "It was the closest thing to thank you." The puppy stirred, licked her chin, and curled tighter against her. She smiled again, wider this time. For the first time since her parents were gone, she didn't feel completely alone. She didn't know it yet, but this tiny creature would change her life. It would become her courage, her bridge to the world, and the human who gave it to her. He had lit the first spark of a bond that could never be broken. The silent girl was silent no more, not inside her heart, not anymore. The marketplace was no longer the same for the orphan girl. Before, it had been a place of fear and whispers. Now it was still noisy and crowded, but something had changed. She no longer sat completely alone. The small earth puppy followed her everywhere, its tiny paws tapping against the stone ground. When she walked, it trotted at her side. When she sat in her corner, it curled into her lap. When she shook from fear, the puppy licked her hands until her trembling slowed. It was always there, never leaving her. The girl still could not speak. Her throat still locked whenever strangers came close. But now she had something between her and the world. When the puppy barked or wagged its tail at passing children, their attention shifted from her silence to its playfulness. For the first time. Some children stopped not to mock but to smile. At first the girl pulled back, hugging the puppy close, afraid they would hurt it the way they had hurt her. But the puppy barked happily, wagging so hard its tail brushed the dust into the air. One little alien girl knelt and offered it a crumb of bread. The puppy took it, then licked her hand. The other children laughed, not cruelly this time, but with delight. The orphan's heart raced. She wanted to run, she wanted to hide, yet the puppy wagged and pressed closer to the strangers, pulling her with it. Her feet stayed still. She didn't flee. Every day after, more children came. They asked questions, not to her, but to the human sometimes, or to each other. What is it? Why does it lick? Why does it follow her? The girl could not answer, but the puppy did with every bark, every wag, every tumble. The human saw this from a distance. He often came to check on them, never staying too long, never pushing her. Sometimes he brought food, sometimes clean water, but most of the time he simply watched her grow braver. One day he crouched near her and spoke softly. "Do you see? They don't laugh at you when he is with you. They see him first, not your silence. He bridges the gap." The girl lowered her eyes, clutching the puppy close. She wanted to answer, but her throat closed again. Her lips parted, but only air came. The human only smiled. "It's all right. You don't have to speak yet. One day you will." The girl stared at him, then at the puppy in her arms. A spark of something new warmed her chest. Hope that maybe he was right. But the marketplace was not kind to changes. Not everyone smiled at the sight of an orphan girl with an earth creature. Some merchants frowned, muttering that humans always brought trouble. A few elders shook their heads, whispering that strange animals carried disease. One evening, as the girl sat in her corner feeding the puppy scraps of bread, a shadow fell. Over her, she looked up, her body stiffening. Two alien guards stood before her, their armor marked with the seal of the local authority. "What is this?" one demanded, pointing at the puppy. The girl froze, her arms wrapping protectively around the small creature. The guard's eyes narrowed. "That animal is not registered. It is not native. It is a risk." Her chest tightened. She wanted to Scream no, but her voice would not come. Fear locked her throat, her whole body shook. The human appeared before she could collapse, his figure stepping calmly between her and the guards, his eyes sharp, his stance unyielding. "The puppy is harmless," he said firmly. "It's not a risk. It's her companion." The guards sneered. "It is corruption of our culture. We do not allow strange earth pets here. It will be taken." The girl's eyes widened. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she clutched the puppy tighter. The puppy whined, pressing against her chest. Her lips trembled. She wanted to shout, to beg, but her voice betrayed her. Only broken sounds came. The human's voice turned hard, colder than the market had ever heard. "You will not take it." His words were simple, but the weight behind them made even the guards pause. Around them, a crowd began to gather. Whispers spread. Some pointed at the girl, some at the human. Some shook their heads, but others frowned at the guards' cruelty. The guards looked uneasy under so many eyes, but their pride refused to bend. "If you resist," one said, "you both will face punishment." The human leaned closer, his voice steady. "Then punish me, but you will not touch her or the puppy." The crowd gasped. Murmurs grew louder. The silent orphan girl, who had always been invisible, was now at the center of everyone's attention. Her chest heaved, her throat burned, and in that moment something inside her cracked. Her lips parted and a sound escaped. Not a scream, not a word, but something raw, desperate, and broken. The guards froze, staring at her as the sound rose, into a trembling plea. And no. It was only one word, shaky and broken, but it was the first word anyone had heard from her in years. The crowd fell silent. The guards exchanged uneasy looks. The human turned his head, and for the first time he saw her fight against her silence. The puppy barked loudly, as if echoing her voice, wagging its tail with fierce energy. The girl clutched it close, her tears falling but her eyes blazing with something new. Courage. And in that moment the bond was sealed. She was no longer just the silent girl. She was the girl with a voice. Even if it was small, even if it was broken, she had found it through the gift of a puppy and the kindness of a human who refused to let her be alone. But the guards did not leave. Their hands tightened on their weapons. The air grew heavy with tension. The crowd whispered louder, and the girl trembled again. The bond had given her strength, but now that strength would be tested. The marketplace had never been so quiet. The guards still stood tall, their armor shining in the sunlight. The orphan girl clutched the puppy close to her chest, her small body shaking. The human stood between her and danger, his face calm but his stance firm. The guards' voices cut through the silence. "This earth animal is not allowed here," one declared. "If you refuse to give it up, then both of you will be taken." The girl's heart pounded, her arms tightened around the puppy. The little creature whimpered, sensing her fear. Around them, the crowd of merchants and shoppers grew larger. Whispers filled the air. Some aliens muttered that the girl had broken rules. Others shook their heads, saying the guards were being too harsh. The human's eyes never wavered. "You call it an animal," he said quietly. "I call it her lifeline." The guards frowned, unused to being challenged. "She is an orphan. She has no rights here," one of them spat. "Do not interfere, human." The words hit the girl like knives. She had always known it was true. In their eyes, she was nothing, no family, no name, no worth. But hearing it said aloud made her chest ache. Her lips trembled, but only a broken sound escaped. The human turned slightly, just enough to glance back at her. His eyes were steady, full of quiet strength. "You're not nothing," he said to her, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Not anymore." The whispers in the crowd grew louder. Some nodded, some frowned, but everyone was watching now. The guards stepped forward, hands on their weapons. The girl froze, pressing against the wall. Her body begged her to run, to disappear, but the puppy barked, a high, sharp sound as if standing in her place. The human spread his arms slightly, blocking the guards. "You want to take her?" His voice was cold now. "You'll have to go through me." The crowd gasped. This was not a voice of fear. It was the voice of someone who had faced worse before. The guards hesitated. They had not expected such open defiance, One of them sneered. You think you can fight the law of this market? The human's lips curved into a faint smile. I've fought worse than law. The girl's eyes widened. She didn't fully understand his words, but his tone shook her to the core. He wasn't afraid, not of the guards, not of the punishment, and for a moment that courage reached her too. Her trembling slowed just a little, then something happened that no one expected. A voice from the crowd shouted, "Let the girl keep the animal." Another added, "She has harmed no one, why? Punish her?" The guards looked around, uneasy. The crowd was turning. People were tired of seeing cruelty toward a silent orphan, tired of pretending they didn't notice. But the guards' pride was stronger than reason. "Enough!" one barked. "Step aside or we will arrest you both." The human did not move. His eyes darkened, his hand rested near his belt, not pulling a weapon yet, but showing he was ready. The air grew heavy. The girl's breath came fast and shallow. Her eyes darted between the guards and the man who stood for her. She wanted to speak, she wanted to beg, her throat burned. Her voice fought to rise, but when she opened her mouth, only a weak sound came. Please. The crowd heard it. A single word, broken but real. Gasps spread like fire. The silent girl had spoken again, this time not by accident, but with will. The guards stiffened, their confidence cracked for a moment. The human's eyes flicked back. At her, a small smile touching his lips. He had heard it too, you see, he said, turning back to the guards. She found her voice because of him. He nodded toward the puppy, still barking bravely in her arms. You would take that away? The guards shifted uncomfortably, but their leader growled. If we bend rules for one orphan, chaos will follow. We will not allow it. The human's voice sharpened like steel. Then maybe your rules are the problem, the crowd murmured louder. Some clapped softly, others whispered agreement. For the first time, the guards looked outnumbered, but before they could decide, another figure appeared. A tall alien in fine robes, the mark of authority shining on his chest. The crowd fell into silence. The local magistrate had arrived. His voice was calm but heavy. What is happening here? He asked. His eyes swept over the guards, the human, and finally the orphan girl clutching the puppy. The guards bowed quickly. Magistrate, this human is defying the law. He refuses to surrender an earth animal. The magistrate's gaze lingered on the girl, her small frame, her trembling arms, the desperate way she clutched the creature. His eyes narrowed slightly. Then he turned to the human. And you? Why do you risk yourself for her? The human met his gaze without fear. Because she deserves better, he said. Because no one should take away the one thing that gives her strength. The magistrate's expression remained unreadable. He looked back at the girl. Her wide, tear-filled eyes met his. Her lips parted as if trying to speak, but no words came. Only silence. The magistrate's face hardened. Take them both to the council, he ordered. The crowd erupted in noise. Some shouted protests. Others fell back in fear. The guards smirked, finally regaining control. They stepped forward to seize the human and the girl. The puppy barked wildly. The girl sobbed silently, clutching it tight, and the human's eyes burned with resolve. He would not let them be taken so easily. The trouble in the market had only just begun. The council chamber was nothing like the noisy market. It was a vast hall built from dark stone, tall pillars rising high. Echoes followed every footstep. The air was heavy with silence and judgment. The orphan girl walked with her head down, clutching the puppy so tightly its soft fur was wet with her tears. The guards pushed her forward. Her small body shook with every step. Behind her, the human walked calmly, his wrists bound with iron cuffs. Yet his eyes carried no fear. The chamber was filled with alien council members, elders in long robes, their faces stern, their eyes sharp. They sat in a half-circle, watching like hawks. At the center was the magistrate, his hands folded as he leaned forward. Bring them, the magistrate commanded. His voice echoed through the chamber. The girl stumbled, nearly falling, but the human steadied her with a touch of his arm. Even in chains, his presence gave her strength. She looked up at him, trembling. His eyes told her one thing without words: stay strong. The guards pushed them into the center. The crowd of onlookers whispered from the balconies above. Some had come out of curiosity, others to see what punishment awaited. The magistrate's gaze fixed on the human. You defied our laws, he said. You brought an earth animal here and gave it to an orphan. You stirred disorder in the marketplace. What do you have to say? The human raised his head. His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. I gave her more than an animal, he said. I gave her hope. I gave her courage to face the world. That is not a crime, the council members murmured. Some scoffed, some frowned. The magistrate's eyes narrowed. Hope does not feed the hungry, courage does not build homes. She is still an orphan, still broken, your gift changes nothing. The girl's chest tightened, his words stabbed her deeper than knives. She lowered her head again, shame and fear wrapping around her. But the puppy licked her chin, whining, softly, reminding her she was not alone. The human turned his head toward her, his voice steady. Look at them, he whispered. Don't let them take your voice again. Her throat locked. Her hands shook. But when the magistrate ordered, Speak, girl. Tell us why we should not cast this animal out. Something inside her snapped. For the first time, she forced her voice forward, broken and trembling. Pia. Please, she whispered. The sound echoed softly in the vast chamber. Her eyes burned with tears, but she continued. He makes me brave. She clutched the puppy tighter. I can't. Without him. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The council members leaned forward. Shock filled their faces. The silent orphan had spoken not one but several words. Her voice was weak, but real. The human's lips curved into a proud smile. He spoke louder, his words aimed at every ear in the hall. You see? You call her broken, but she is not. You call her cursed, but she is stronger than you think. All she needed was someone to believe in her. The magistrate slammed his hand on the table. Enough! His voice boomed. This is sentiment, not law. The law is clear. Earth animals are not allowed. They will be removed. The guard stepped forward again. The girl panicked, clutching the puppy so tight it whimpered. Her breath came fast. Her voice cracked. No! No! She cried, louder than before. The sound shook the chamber. The human stepped in front of her, chains clinking. His voice thundered. Then your law is wrong. The crowd erupted into noise. Some shouted in agreement. Others gasped in fear. Never had anyone spoken to the council this way. The magistrate's face darkened. His voice turned icy. Careful, human, your defiance will cost you your life. But the human did not step back. He looked each council member in the eye. If kindness is a crime, then punish me. If compassion is corruption, then I will gladly be guilty. The hall fell silent. His words echoed like fire. The council members shifted uneasily. Some avoided his gaze, for deep inside they knew his words were true. The girl looked up at him, her small hands trembling less now. His courage was seeping into her. She wiped her tears, her lips trembling as she spoke again, this time louder, clearer. He saved me. She looked at the council, her eyes shining though wet with tears. Don't take him away, the puppy barked as if echoing her plea. Its small voice rang through the chamber, filling the silence. For the first time, the magistrate looked uncertain. His eyes flicked between the girl, the puppy, and the human who stood. Like an unbroken wall, even in chains, the whispers of the crowd grew into waves, more and more voices calling out, Let her keep it. She is no danger. The human is right. The magistrate's jaw tightened. The council chamber trembled not with weapons, but with voices, with unity. The girl's chest rose and fell as she realized something she had never believed before. Her voice mattered. Her words, no matter how broken, had changed the silence, and yet the magistrate's face hardened again. We will deliberate, he said coldly. Until then, the human and the orphan will remain under guard. The guard stepped closer, but the human smiled faintly, bending down to whisper near the girl. You spoke. That is the start. Whatever happens now, remember, You are not alone." Her tears fell again, but this time they were not only fear, they were mixed with something new. Strength. The stand had been made. The outcome was still uncertain, but the girl had found her voice and the council could not ignore it. The council chamber was filled with silence. The magistrate's cold words still hung in the air. "We will deliberate," he had said. The guards stood tall, their hands close to their weapons. The orphan girl clutched her puppy tight, her small body trembling. The human remained calm, his chains clinking softly as he straightened his back. Hours passed like years. The council members whispered among themselves. Some argued, some frowned. Some glanced at the girl, others at the human. The crowd in the balconies grew restless. Their whispers grew louder. The marketplace had followed them. Here and now the entire city waited for a verdict. Finally the magistrate rose. His eyes swept across the hall. His voice was loud and heavy. "The law is clear," he began, "but today we have seen something unexpected." The silent orphan girl, believed broken, spoke with her own voice. The question is, was it the human's corruption, or was it her own hidden strength? Gasps filled the chamber. The girl hugged the puppy closer, her eyes wide with fear. The human's gaze never wavered. He knew this moment would decide everything. The magistrate's lips pressed into a thin line. "The council rules that the animal will not be taken. The girl may keep it." The chamber erupted in noise. The crowd shouted, some clapping, some cheering. The guards looked stunned. The girl's heart stopped for a moment, then pounded so hard it hurt. Her tears fell freely as she pressed her face into the puppy's fur. Relief flooded her chest like warm sunlight. But the magistrate raised his hand and silence returned. His voice grew harder. "However, the human is guilty of defying authority. His punishment will be exile from this city." The cheers faded, replaced by gasps of shock. The girl's head snapped up. Her eyes went wide. She shook her head violently. "No!" she cried. Her voice broke, but it was louder than ever before. "Don't take him." The human knelt beside her, even in chains. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, his voice calm. "It's all right," he said. "You have your strength now. You have him." He nodded to the puppy, wagging happily despite the heavy air. Her tears streamed down. She grabbed his sleeve, refusing to let go. I can't," she stammered. Her broken voice cracked every word, but she forced them out. "Not without you." The human's eyes softened. For a long moment he said nothing. He only looked at her, a silent bond between them. Then he smiled, faintly. "You already proved you can." The council watched silently. Some members clearly moved. The magistrate's face remained cold, but his eyes flickered. The crowd above began to murmur again, louder and louder. "Let him stay. He did nothing wrong. He gave her life." The noise swelled like a storm, shaking the chamber. The magistrate slammed his staff against the ground. But the voices refused to die. The people had chosen. At last the magistrate raised his hand again, his jaw clenched. "Very well," he said slowly. "The human may stay, but he is now under watch. If he breaks another law, he will be cast out without question." The crowd exploded with cheers. The girl gasped, her tears now turning to joy. She clutched the puppy and turned to the human, her lips trembling into a fragile smile. For the first time her voice carried clearly, though soft. Thank you." The human froze for a heartbeat, then nodded. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "Just keep living." The guards removed his chains reluctantly. The sound of the metal falling to the stone echoed like victory. The girl reached for his hand, her small fingers gripping his tightly. This time she did not hide. She did not cower. She stood beside him in front of everyone, her puppy wagging at her feet. The crowd watched in awe. The silent orphan was silent no more, in awe. The days that followed, the marketplace changed. Children came to play with the puppy, and the girl, though still shy, no longer hid behind the walls. Her voice was weak, broken at times, but it was there. She spoke small words, and each one felt like a victory. The human stayed near, guiding, her never forcing, always patient. He taught her how to care for the puppy, how to face others slowly, step by step, and though the magistrate's eyes remained watchful, the people's hearts had already decided. The orphan girl was no longer cursed, she was part of them. One morning, as the sun rose over the stalls, the girl walked through the market with the puppy at her side. For the first time, her shoulders were not hunched. Her eyes were not fixed on the ground. She walked tall, her steps small but steady. When a merchant's child waved at her, she froze for a moment, then, with trembling lips, she whispered back, "Hello." The child grinned and the girl's heart soared. Her voice, though soft, had reached someone without fear. The human watched from a distance, his arms crossed, a small smile on his face. He didn't step in. He didn't need to. She was no longer the broken girl hiding in shadows. She was becoming something more. The puppy barked, running in circles. The girl laughed, an unsteady laugh, but real. The marketplace that once crushed her now echoed with "ow." Her sound? Her journey had only begun, but she was no longer alone, not in silence, not in fear. She had her puppy, she had her voice, and she had someone who had shown her the truth. Even the smallest kindness could change an entire life. The orphan girl's story was no longer about loss, it was about a new beginning.